Hello friends. I know it's been very long, but I hope that you're all doing well. Today's video is going to be a huge book haul. Now these are the books that I have been accumulating for the past few months. I have been pretty good in self-control, not buying books more than I read. So here's some of the books. I think I have around 25 books here to talk to you about. So without further ado, let's jump into it. There was a book fair in my city, and that is kind of an annual thing. Every January, they have a huge book fair. I go to that book fair every year without missing it with my dad, and I used to buy books. Just being there makes me feel so happy. These are the books that are accumulated there, and some of which I bought from Amazon and Flipkart and some other websites too. Most of these books are pre loved ones, so I did not spend much technically. Also, there's one more thing I want to say. This book haul has no structure. I'm going to grab whatever book I am getting my hands on and I'm going to talk to you about. So, without further ado, let's jump right in. The first book that I want to show you guys is the newest release by Alex Michaelides, and it is called The Fury. Now, he has written two more novels prior to this, The Silent Patient and The Maidens, both of which I binge read in a single day and I devoured it so quickly. It was so fast paced and so well written. So, when I realized that he's coming up with another title, I had to get it no matter what the story is. But the story itself is sounding pretty good to me because it is about ex movie star. She's getting into a Greek island with all her friends, and one of them literally murders her. And the rest of the crew is telling us the story of leading up to who murdered the ex movie star. I think this is enough to intrigue me to get to read this book. I can't wait to dive into this and binge read it once again, like I read his all other books. Next one is a book that I'm currently in the middle of, and that is called The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. This is a complicated political war fantasy series. It has number of kingdoms, and it is kind of reminding me of Game of Thrones because it has a lot of smaller kingdoms, and one is trying to gather them all and make it come under one particular banner. And one such king actually does that and kind of dies after doing it. So there is chaos coming after his death. So there are war going on. It is really very interesting. There are four books in the series, and I'm really very interested in reading it throughout the year, and every book is as chunky as the first one. So I'm a little bit intimidated, but nonetheless, this is keeping me going. The story is fast paced. It has so many characters that I have to take notes to remember, but still I'm enjoying it. It is literally fun, and I should thank Murphy Napier, I think her name is. I got the suggestion from her YouTube channel, and it has been wonderful so far. So I can't wait to finish this, and I'll give you an update after finishing this. Next up is a book that has been talk of the town for last year, for almost an year, I think, and she's kind of a famous author who is Rebecca F. Kwong, and the book is Yellow Face. This I don't know much about, but I think the story follows writers and the world that the dark world that the other people don't know about. It is about writing a story and publishing it and all the politics that is surrounding it. And this story literally has some kind of relatable characters to the writer herself. I think she has written some of her personal experiences in the book. Most of the people that I have seen who have read this have loved it, and I think thrown off pages Isabella also loved it. So I think her mine and her taste little bit aligned. So I think that I'm going to enjoy this. So let's wait and see. This particular story starts in a chemical lab and kind of ends up in a kitchen, but nonetheless it is most powerful story I've ever heard. That is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. This particular story follows Elizabeth Zott, and this takes place in 1960s, and she is considered as an unconventional woman because she is not well received in the field of chemistry, but nonetheless she's getting ended up as a single mom, and she's taking part in a cooking show, and she explains things such as add a pinch of sodium chloride and such instead of salt, and that is taking an unconventional approach to the kitchen, and it is inspiring so much women. And also there's this guy called Calvin Evans who falls in love with her during her chemistry time, and we don't know what is going to happen with him unless I read this book. So I am waiting to read it pretty quick early this year. This is the first book that I read this year. It is pretty short, it is Greek mythology, and it is kind of in my arena, and that book is Athena's Child by Hannah Lynn. This is a short version of a Greek mythology retelling, and This follows Medusa, Athena, and the one who kills Medusa, I think his name is Perseus. His name is Perseus. And I literally loved the story. It is so captivating. It is so refreshing. It is unlike other Greek retelling. It was so fast paced, and since it is very short, they have to pack in so much adventure, action, emotions, everything into this 150 pages. So it was really enthralling and it was so exciting to read. I'm so glad that I read this. It is really very good. It is 4 out of 5 stars, and I absolutely recommend you to read it if you are a Greek mythology lover. The next book is a one that I bought out of a whim during Christmas holidays because this was screaming winter and Christmas, which is The Murder at Maybridge Castle, A Christmas Mystery by Adam Moncrief. This is a story that follows this Maybridge Castle that is getting reopened, and a group of guests are invited. One of them dies, and it is kind of a cozy mystery, who done it kind of story. That was all I needed to know when I bought this book. Unfortunately, I haven't read it yet. I read some 50 pages of it. It was interesting, but somehow I got derailed from the reading experience. So I will start reading it soon, and I hope to finish it very quickly. Or it might go to the Christmas. I don't know. It might, whatever happens, happens. Next up, I have a book that is written by an author who's kind of called as the queen of Gothic literature, who is none other than Kate Morton. And the book I'm talking about is The Clockmaker's Daughter. I have read few other titles by her, and all the books are so captivating. I have had wonderful experience reading her books. All her books are very slow paced, and it kind of builds the story up. I feel it is really, really good. So this book, I hope, is also gives me the same vibes. So the back of the book says that it's the story starts in 1860s and ends till the present date. That is how most of her stories are. I kind of like the format of her storyline. I have the most beloved book of her is The Forgotten Garden. It was really great. So I'm hoping that this book also gives me the same happiness while reading it. So I cannot wait to read this. The next two books are romantic comedy books, which is a genre that I seldom read, but sometimes you need to take everything a little bit lightly and read a book that you know that they are going to get back together at the end of the book without much plot twist and all. So I got two books. One happens in spring and one happens in winter. So the winter one is called Highland Fling by Katie Ford, and the spring one is called A Whiff of Scandal by Carol Matthews. Both of these are light-hearted rom-coms that I can't wait to read. One happens in Scotland and one happens in the countryside of England, both of which are very, very romantic places to read a romantic story about. So I'm having high hopes. I might pick this up when I'm feeling very, very low and I need some kind of cozy romantic love story to cuddle with a cup of coffee and a blanket. So I'm saving these for the emergency when I feel the lowest. The next book is a book that I bought only because I read the author's other book, which is Piranesi, and the author is Susanna Clark. And I loved Piranesi from my entire heart. So I wanted to read her other book, that is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Yes, this is so huge. I don't know when I will get to it. I am kind of very much intimidated by its size, but I have heard so much good things about it. And my favorite YouTuber, Alexandra Roslin, liked it. She said it flew like anything. So I'm hoping that this is not going to bother me much. The size doesn't bother me much. So it's kind of a fantasy story. It has a magic system. It has so much nuances in it. Like this magic system is taught by two people. One wants to keep it inside, just like Voldemort did, to keep it to the pure bloods, and the other wants to give it to everyone, whoever wants to learn magic. So I think the story is kind of Harry Potterish, which itself is attracting me more. I really want to get to this book this year. So this book is a book that I've heard a lot about, but I don't know exactly what it is. I have heard a lot of people praising about this book, and the book is The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. I know I'm pronouncing it wrong, but pardon me. That is how I know to pronounce it. So when I read the back of the book, it said symmetry, it said library, it said a kind of secret society, it said books. That was much more enough for me to pick this book up. And I like to go into books without knowing much so that I don't get any spoilers from them. So this is a book that I think if you go blind, you will love it. So I'm hoping to enjoy this. Next up, I have books of my favorite author. I have two books of her. One I have already read and I already own it, but I couldn't resist myself but picked this one up because the edition was lovely. It screamed classic, and that is none other than Ella Montgomery's Anne of Green Gables. Just look at this book. So this has that authentic vintage feel to it. I couldn't resist picking it up. The font size are so big, which is my kind of reading fonts. It is really easy to read books that has fonts that has this much of size, and the yellowed pages. Everything about this book was so good. I found this in an old book market and I couldn't resist buying it. And the next book from the same author is Jane of Lantern Hill. Last year, I completed Emily of New Moon series from the same author, and I loved it. I couldn't tackle with the fact that the series was over. I wanted to stay in that world forever. I wanted to be friends with Emily. I felt the same with Anne of Green Gables too. I wanted to be friends with Anne, and the description of nature that Ella Montgomery does, it's really impeccable. She literally transports us to the place which we have never seen, and it's kind of hundreds of years before we were born. And so I really wanted to delve into Ella Montgomery's world. So that is why I picked up Jane of Lantern Hill, and I have no idea what the story is about. I don't care what the story is. I just want to read some Montgomery. The next set of books are all classics and collector's edition. I'm really proud that I own them now. I just looking at them makes me really, really happy. And one of such book is Daphne du Maurier's My Cousin Rachel. This is a collector edition by Virago Modern Classic. Just love the cover. I wanted to get this edition for so long, and finally I got the hands on this book. Holding it literally makes me well up, and it's I loved Rebecca by this author. It is of another level. I could not explain how what Rebecca made me feel. It was so good. Even if I try to explain you how it made me feel, I will be speechless. So I'm not going to do that. But I have heard that My Cousin Rachel also is really good. It is intriguing. It is dark. It is so humorous. It is going to get to your head. Rachel is one of the characters next to Rebecca, I have heard. So I can't wait to read what Rachel has in her sleeves up. The next book is another Gothic literature, and that is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I have been intent to reading this Jane Eyre for quite a long time now, but I couldn't find the right book with right font size, with right page quality to read that, because I intend to do that with classic books because it is kind of dry to start with, I feel. So this aesthetics of the book and the font size and everything adds up to the experience of reading it, and it might compel you to read more. So that exactly what this book is doing to me. I want to pick this up soon. It is so good. The color itself is so soothing, and it has sprayed edges. I love how minimal the cover page is. It is really very great. So I'm happy that I own this now, and I can't wait to read this book. The next set of books are all leather bound classic editions. I don't know what the story is about. I picked most of it because it was so aesthetically pleasing for my eyes, and I really wanted to have this in my library. It adds so much beauty to my shelves right now, and I can't wait to show you all of this. The first one is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. This is such a lovely edition, and it feels like I am being transported to Victorian England where this kind of books are in place. This book also has illustrations in them, so it's adding up so much value to it. These are the end papers of this book, and it's such a classic book. The next one is P.G. Wodehouse books. It has a compilation of his works, and it is gorgeous with this golden embossing, and its spine is so beautiful. It has a bookmark, and these are the end papers. And this one doesn't have any illustrations, I guess, but nonetheless, it is a very beautiful book. The next one is my favorite book. I have read it, I have watched the movie, I've fallen in love with the movie, and I watched it so many times. And when I saw this book, I could not resist, even though I have another copy of it, which is The Three Musketeers by Alexander Dumas. Just look at this book. Isn't she gorgeous? The color combination, red and blue, and the gold, the sword, everything is so pleasing. I could not resist buying it. The next set of books are from Reader's Digest compilation, and this particular one is The Gift of Maggie and Other Stories by O. Henry. O. Henry is a very famous writer, and he writes short stories. I have read so many of his short stories during my school time, and The Gift of Maggie is a great one too. So I cannot wait to read this, and it literally is so good. It has illustrations again, it has borders for the titles. It is literally I'm kind of lucky to have these books in my library. That is how I feel right now. And the next three books are also from the Reader's Digest, but I know nothing about. I'll just mention the titles, but I can't wait to read these. It is looking very appealing to me. The first one is House of Seven Gables by Nathaniel Hawthorne, and this is how the book looks like. This is the spine. Next up, The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame, and this is how the book looks like with the spine. Last but not least, this book is King Solomon's Mine, and it is written by H. Rider Haggard, and this is how the book looks like. This is the spine. Isn't all these books gorgeous? The next book that I'm going to talk to you about is a book that is part of a series, and I own all the books in that series except this one. I have been looking for this for quite a long time. I did not want to buy the new book. I wanted to buy the pre-loved book, but it was not available anywhere. And finally, you should see my excitement when I got to this book. That is George R. Martin's Game of Thrones, otherwise called A Song of Ice and Fire. And this particular one is the last of that series, which is A Dance with Dragons Part 2, After the Feast. I have the first part of this book, and this is the second one. Technically, it means that the sixth part is divided into two, and this is the second part of that book. I am so happy that I finally own this. This is the only book that I am yet to read in that series. I can't wait to get back to the King's Landing, to Winterfell, and it's such a nice place and such a nice time. I can't wait to dive into this. We have almost come to the end of this haul. We have only 4 books here, and the 2 books that I have in my hand are non-fiction. The first one is In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park, and this is a book that I've heard so much about. I think I heard it from Olive, a booktuber who speaks a lot about non-fiction books, and this particular book is follows Yeonmi Park. It is her journey from North Korea to freedom, literally. And she explains a lot about North Korean culture, North Korean government, everything. And she has gone through unspeakable trauma and accidents that happened to her. And I was kind of intrigued by it. I wanted to read how North Korea acts, how North Korea behaves, and also about the people of North Korea and what they go through. I think this will be a very good start for that. The next book is about evolution of life. I'm kind of a science geek. I always tend to go to read astronomy, evolution, and everything. And I've always been that kid who read complex science principles and things just out of fun. I know it feels weird, but I kind of like this author, Richard Dawkins. The Greatest Show on Earth is the book I'm talking about. He speaks a lot about evolution. I have read his other book, The God Delusion, I think. He puts up a very compelling argument, and I really wanted to learn about evolution, so that is why I picked it. And also it has a beautiful, gorgeous cover on top of it. I got this hardcover book for half of its price, so it was a win for me. So I immediately went for it, and I am currently reading it. I am technically in page 40 or something. It is really good, but it's non-fiction. It takes time to read, so hopefully I'll finish it off soon. So the last 2 books that I want to talk to you about are kind of my favorite because I have been reading this author since childhood. He kind of introduced me to this treasure hunt kind of writing style. I have always loved Indiana Jones. I've always loved National Treasure movies. So this book also gives that kind of vibe. Also, it has science element to it, historical element to it. All of these things are literally my favorite. Keeping the controversial part of these books apart, I kind of like the author's writing style, the pacing, everything is superb. It gave me such a wonderful time when I read these books. So I ended up collecting the illustrated collector's edition of Angels and Demons and The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. So this also I got with the half of its price. It has so many illustrations. Oh my god, these books are really very heavy, so it's really hard to hold them up. It has so many great illustrations that are related to the story. And this Angels and Demons in particular deals with the CERN Large Hadron Collider that is in Geneva. That came up during my school time, and immediately I was very much interested in learning about the collider, and this book spoke a lot about the technicalities of that collider, and it gave me so much happiness to read about it. And naturally, Da Vinci Code was so popular at that time. That is the reason I read it, and it's nice. The drama is good, the pacing is good. It was such a nice time. So these 2 books are just for collecting purpose, and it is going to be the crown of my shelf for years to come. It is 25 plus books that I shown you today, And I don't know when I'm going to get to these books, but I hopefully at least half I'll finish this year. And before buying more books, I tend to finish all of this. So that is pretty much it. Until I see you in a very next video with a bookish content, keep reading. This is Sushmita signing off.